Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2023 film Snow Falls. This is a lower budget film, more independent, so I like to kind of delve into those from time to time. I also like to get the bigger budget stuff, so this might be one that people haven't heard of so much, so it's a newer film. This is a no spoiler review, so it's helpful too that if a lot of people haven't heard of it, you can watch this review, get an idea if you want to watch it or not, and maybe check it out. I don't know. So I did watch it on Vudu, which is like a service of Fandango for people who don't know, where you can rent or purchase digitally movies. It was, I think, with taxes, just like slightly over $6. I think it was like $6.23 or something like that. So definitely worth a shot. The film is less than an hour and a half. I think with credits, it's like an hour and 19 minutes. So it doesn't take up a lot of time. So if it's a film you end up not liking a whole lot, you know, might be worth supporting some independent stuff. But you can base your opinions on, or if you're going to watch it or not, based off this review or whatever. I'm just throwing it out there. This was directed by Colton Tran, who also did Raising Cain and Spook. Written by Luke Genton, who also wrote The Bone Box. And story by Tran as well as Laura M. Young. Now, this film apparently was shot in just 6 days. So I will say, I wasn't like the biggest fan of this film. It was, you know, kind of an in-betweener for me. There's some things I liked about it, some things I really did not like about it. But the fact that this was shot in 6 days, kind of impressive to me, to be honest, because there is a lot of work that goes into any film. And to do a film that's over an hour long and to shoot that whole thing in 6 days, you really got to be moving. You have to be moving. You have to know what you're doing. So that did impress me to a degree. Don't like to give too much away with the synopses. So this is literally about a bunch of friends who kind of go away to a secluded getaway cabin, and there's a really bad snowstorm. They lose power, and there's some bad stuff that happens. This isn't like a slasher or anything like that, but there's a horror element to it. You'll see what it is if you want to check it out. Interesting concept, I will say that. I did really like the story idea. I'm not 100% or even 80% or 70% on the execution of that idea, but I like the idea behind it. Anyway, the character banter in the very opening scene gave me a very bad feeling about where the film was going. Now, I will say, based off that character banter, the film was a bit better than I thought it would end up being, because I thought, man, I'm in for a very rough ride, potentially. But it did point to the fact that the dialogue, the written dialogue, is not very good. I will say that the actors seem to do with the roles kind of what they could. They're not all on the exact same level, but the more important actors in the film, I think, did a pretty solid job with it. And again, it's hard to do an awesome job with poorly written dialogue, and this dialogue was kind of cringeworthy at times. And that banter in the very beginning, like, really kind of showcases that. So much so that it's like, you know, they're trying to go for some humor here with kind of how they go back and forth and some other things said throughout the film, but it's not good. Like, it does not land. They're attempts at humor, but they're just simply that. They are attempts, unfortunately. Sometimes it looks like it's shot in HD, and sometimes it doesn't. That's kind of a little bit of an issue. There's one scene in particular in the beginning of the film where, you know, they're inside of a car and it looks like it's in HD, and then they get outside of the car and it's kind of like a wider shot and it looks kind of fuzzy. So I was like, what is going on here? Did they use different cameras and they just weren't both HD? I don't know what was going on with this. It was kind of a weird thing, in my opinion. Lots of natural and bulb lighting used in this film with a very fuzzy glow around it, and it looks really bad. I know that sometimes filmmakers will kind of like leave that in there to give the cabin in this instance more of like a, you know, rustic, dingy feel to it, because you can kind of like see the dust and everything. That's kind of like the idea it gives you with like that glowing around it. That's kind of a little bit dingy, but it looks bad. It looks really bad. I don't know what happened there. I think they were trying to not use professional lighting, like actual lighting setups. I think they were trying to just use as much natural light and bulb light as they could. That did lead to some scenes that are just too dark, in my opinion. Not a ton, but a few. And that glow. That glow is very distracting. It looks awful. They should have done without that one. The actors sell the friendships in this film pretty well, even though the dialogue isn't that great. Kind of going back to the actors kind of trying to do what they could, even though the writing of the dialogue is not so great. Great shooting location. I love the shooting location. It looks phenomenal. I think they used it pretty well. And the other thing is, I think that it really helps sell the whole isolated feeling based off where they are, what it looks like. They do have some CGI in this that, you know, it's snowing at one point in the film. Actually, for a large portion of the film, it's snowing. And, yeah, the snow not looking very good. You can tell when it's CGI snow and it's not looking good. CGI in general, there are a few other moments. There were literally some moments where people were outside and they CGI'd in their breath in the cold, and it looked horrible. Because you do have some scenes where you can see naturally their breath in the cold, and you know, those two things in the same film, it makes the CGI look even worse. But there are some other CGI stuff that just does not look good. But it's very low budget, so you kind of have to understand that. There are actually some shots in this film that look quite good. There's some inspired filmmaking, there's some inspired cinematography, some well-framed shots, some interesting shot angles. So I like that aspect of it. You can tell that the director has a good idea of what he's doing, especially, like I said, to get this thing done in 6 days. I already talked about the humor issue. These people go into panic mode very fast when the issues start in this film. And for knowing as much as they do, you would think that they would end up being more prepared. There isn't a whole lot of realism with these actual characters, even though they're supposed to be set in a realistic setting. That's a big problem because it just doesn't feel right. Everything feels very off. They don't feel like real people. The other thing is they're very flat. They're very one-dimensional characters that you don't care a whole lot about. There isn't really much backstory to them. There isn't much of any development to them. It's just kind of, here are some people thrust into a situation, and it's horror. So hopefully you enjoy it. So there's not a lot to it. But one of my biggest issues was that once they're very fast at just like starting to panic a lot. But when they start to panic, they are immediately throwing out all these smart things like, oh, well, you have to do this in this instance and watch out for this and don't do this. And so it seems like they're very knowledgeable, but for how knowledgeable they are, they did not plan things very well for this trip at all. So those things are very disconnected feeling with what's going on in the film. There's a very wild theory that one of the characters ends up pulling kind of out of nowhere. Now, it is an important part of the film itself, so it really is just one of those things where, like, they had this idea that they wanted to throw into the film, and they could not come up with a way to make it feel like it makes sense in the film. After it's introduced, yes, but when it's introduced, you're just kind of like, what did... Very left field. Like, where did this come from? What are we doing? Where are we going? And the fact that a character brings it up, it's not kind of like discovered over time. Very out there. Like, it's definitely one of those, like, writing for convenience type things versus what makes sense. Again, talked about the bad CGI. There is some intrigue to the story, I will say. Like I said, I like the story idea. I don't necessarily love the way that it was executed. I think there's a lot of stuff that could have been done better. But as I said, you know, this is a lower budget film, independent, and it was done in 6 days. So to be honest, what they got out of it, impressive enough for how quickly it was shot. And I'm assuming they had like a very, very, very low budget. The characters are very one-dimensional, like I said. It has an okay ending. An okay ending. For what the film is, I didn't hate the ending. I didn't love the ending. I ended up being pretty in the middle on it. So that kind of takes me to what I'm going to give ratings-wise. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I have to go with a 2.5 star rating for this one because I truly am split in the middle. Because what this is and what I see it to be as a very low budget independent film, there are some really good things that are impressive for that aspect of the film. But there's a lot of stuff that's not, that needed to be done better in order to actually like throw it out there and have people renting it on Vudu or seeing it wherever. But I'm not upset that I spent just a little over $6 to watch it because I'm down to support independent filmmakers. It's not just all about big studios. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this film. If you want to spend that money or if you find it to watch some other way, go ahead and put it in the comments. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are you in between on it? Love hearing differing opinions on these because sometimes it can really change my perspective of the film. So feel free to disagree with me in a nice manner, obviously, which people usually do on this channel. So I would appreciate that. Also, what I would appreciate is subscribing to my channel if you haven't already and hitting the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week at this point. But thank you so much for checking this out. I really thank everyone for all the watching of anything on my channel you do, even if you just watched this one video. I do appreciate it. And until next time, keep it brutal.